Boom, welcome back to another Footy 6 podcast. Today I'm humbly joined by ex-Watford captain, 25-time capped United States center back, Jay Demerit. Jay, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I always love a fellow soccer fan.
All right, so Jay, before we even get started, I want to talk about how I personally heard of you. So I'm 22 years old. I was born in 2000. So you're a little before my time, I would say. So I was taking my licensing course through the federation, and my course instructor named Justin Roberts, we were talking about holistic approach, which for people, if you don't know what holistic approach is, it's the complete understanding of the soccer player, the mental side, the physical side, the intangibles, everything like that. So we were talking about that, and he was like, if you guys really want to learn about someone who had to take the hard way and didn't give up, go watch this documentary on Jay Demerit, and he sent out this podcast as well. I sat down and watched it, and I was like, this is probably the coolest story I've ever heard in my entire life. So Jay, I want to take you back to after you graduated from University of Chicago. What was your mind space? What were you thinking at that time, Jay?
I mean, again, when you have the road less traveled, there's not too many other paths you can take. And so for me, I was, again, but there's two pieces to touch on. One is that holistic piece you talked about. But I was coming into a bit of an unknown situation trying to be a professional soccer player. But I had a degree in design. I had a bunch of jobs. I had worked as a bartender, a landscaper, a design student. So I had a lot of life experience built into that. And so within that, I came in with a calmer head and a more understanding of who I was and what I brought to a field. And, all that kind of stuff, I think, really helped navigate my journey, when I was, a bit of an unknown. But I had grown up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I didn't have a huge amount of opportunity. I got a gifted scholarship to go play D1, small D1 school and in Chicago and changed positions and played at the back all of a sudden my last 3 years and became an All-American honorable mention defender, which again, on paper, that says like I'm one of the best 75 kids in the country. And for someone that only had 3 years of experience, I was like, damn, I guess that means something, I think, but only I know that story. Some scout from some place isn't going to look at Jay Demerit on a piece of paper and get excited. He's like, who's that guy? He never was an ODP player. I played 3 sports until I was 18. And so, my dad was a track coach at my high school. So I was just around older kids, my whole life, just running with them and hanging out with them and being athletic. And all of this was, again, really built into my story of who I was and why it kind of, once I got the opportunity, I kind of grabbed it with both hands because I was more prepared for it than your generalized younger player because I had more life experience into how I accepted that opportunity.
That is so what I got out of that is that you felt like you were built for this and you're a tough kid. You've come from a hardworking town, and that I love the grinded out mentality. That I think that's something that a lot of people nowadays don't really have. So that is so awesome. So what I really want to get into with this is from America to England. What was the biggest differences in training sessions you would say personally? Because that's what I, as a coach, that's kind of what the more of the route I want to take is I want to ask you questions about that as a player who played in the Premier League, who played in the Championship, who got to play in the World Cup. So what would you think is the biggest difference in training sessions abroad from back home in the States?
I would say in America, it's more athletically based, and then we build skill on top of that. And I think at the opposite, when you go to Europe, it's built on technique first, and then they build in strength, conditioning, and all these things where, maybe they lacked in their culture of the game. And so I think, we haven't built enough culture in the U.S. to really call it ours, or to really, we always had to follow people into it. I think for the first time ever, we're really starting to create our own culture in North American soccer. Where it's very different to play in Portland than it is to play in Kansas City, but both of them are awesome. You know what I mean? And so that's the idea. Like, but Portland is a very different culture than Kansas City, so of course they'd be different. But it's kind of like what Europe is, and it's on such a higher level. You know, like I talk about it all the time. In England, it was like 96 professional teams in the size of one U.S. state. It's like I always say to my friends from America, I'm like, who are big NFL fans, for instance. Again, I grew up in Green Bay. I'm a huge Packers fan. So I'm always like, to my friends in Green Bay, I'm like, listen, what if the NFL was all in Wisconsin and there were 2 Lambeau Fields in Green Bay and one wore green and the other one wore yellow, and they hated each other and they fought in the streets. And then they had to go down to Milwaukee where there was 2 more stadiums that were like that. And then everywhere in between there was dotted around from 4th division to the top Premier League division. And every year the top 3 teams in every league go up to get promoted, and the bottom 3 teams get relegated to the league below. And it's like, so every year it's different, but the competition is so high, but it's so concentrated. Like the culture is just insane, and that's the difference between Europe and here. It's more like we're 100 years behind, so you got culture built into your bones over there. Everyone cares. Every player wants to play better. The net is like insane because everyone's there to play, and so that opportunity is something that it's pretty daunting when you think about it, because there's so many players. But at the end of the day, to your point, I was like one of those players that I wanted that challenge. You know, like you never know what it's like to, I know what it was like to stand at the back of the line, but until you start stepping in front of people, you don't know what that feels like to stand at the front of the line, and you earn that. And so I was someone that had to do that, and that was my story. But again, I was built for it because I knew that it was better than some of the other real world things I was doing. So, I was like, okay, I want to make this work. I'm gonna do what others won't, and so that's kind of what I had to do.
That is so awesome. And the culture thing, the United States being as big as it is almost a blessing and a curse, because it's so hard to bring one culture to such a big country. So I think that's also tough. And one thing you touched on, do you think that MLS or USL should go to promotion relegation? You think that'll ever happen, or?
I think it'll happen. I do. I hope it happens. That's where real culture is, because you don't get the same thing every year. You get lots of different things. You get the little guys trying to fight the big players. You get the, it's got to be sustainable, and until the both leagues are sustainable financially, owners won't be into it. And I guess I kind of get that, but USL maybe gets big and there's 25,000 seat stadiums and they're all full. Again, this is 20, 30 years down the line. If the growth of the game continues the way it has, and where, there's stadiums all across America, and they're big ones, they're little ones, they're huge ones. Again, 2 of them are in the same town. You know what I mean? Like that's the growth, the true growth of the game, if you want to think about it that deep. But like that's the way it has to go to get to pro rel for sure. But I think it's capable of happening. People love sports in North America. Why wouldn't it be football? When you bring in culture, again, why do you think 99% of the rest of the world loves this game to a passion where they cry if they see their favorite player? Like that's culture. And those have been built for a long time, likes of the Argentinians and the Brazilians, like they got legends in there. And so that's our job as Americans, is to try to create our own legends and try to figure out, how we can now be a soccer nation and someone that cares about the sport so deeply that they got 2 big stadiums in one town.
It would be such an amazing thing for us as Americans for that to happen. I hope one day that we have, maybe my kids and your kids will have players that they idolize so much that it really does bring tears to their eyes. Because I feel like if I saw Ronaldo or Messi, or even if Maradona was alive, I love Maradona or Cruyff. If I saw them, I would fangirl, and I think I would be in tears as well.
Yeah, that's the joy.
So after you retired and you hung up your boots, how long after did it take for you to really start being able to watch the game and sit down and enjoy it with the national team, or if you like club, anything like that? Or was it right after you were still able to like sit down on the couch and watch 90 minutes?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I never really watched myself play, so like I never really did that. I've actually enjoyed watching myself play, like with my son. He's 7 now, and so like we can Google a game that I might have played in or something. We can watch it. Like that's kind of cool. Like to be able
That's
to
so
share
awesome.
with my kid, and he doesn't get to see me. He never got to see me play. So like at the end of the day, it's like using these types of things to help again with the culture of everything. You know what I mean? And as a dad, you want to share that with your kids. And I think for me, like just being a player that got to play at that level and be an example for that for other people, and that's what we run. I run youth programs now. As I came out of the game, I use a lot of it to tell stories about how it all works, and we have mixed mentors that are professionals in a bunch of different fields, from technology to chefs that we bring up to fire chiefs from the local fire town. It's like they get to meet leaders in a bunch of fields all through this leadership type environment, and it's kind of like masterclass live, if I had to put it bluntly. But that's kind of how we work around these youth programs. But again, it's all about creating culture around information and people and telling a lot of stories. And I think that for me has always been the joy of having one.
So is the coaching, will you coaching the only extent will be with youth programs, like with your son and stuff like that? Or is that something you kind of want to challenge yourself one day to do?
I think maybe if I can, I would like to get there eventually. You know, I got a young son, so I know the schedule of a footballer and a footballing coach. So, you know, I'll see how that goes. But again, that's why I started with youth programs locally here. I think we have a scalable idea we're building with EA right now that's going to like be an online digital program, like an app, like Masterclass, but gamified for teenagers. And so you learn from like celebrities, or you learn from certain people in certain fields, and you get a bunch of information around that, and then you get to practice these things and then earn Zoom calls with that celebrity by like learning about their life, or learning about how to make the video game from EA, and then getting a jersey unlocked in your fantasy team, and like stuff like that, where it's like you give incentive for the real learning and the real mentorship that we should have through professionals. Like it takes a lot to get to the levels that we're so fortunate to get to, and I was, and that it was such a special feeling. You want to give that back to the next generation. You want to give that back to people that ask, and because that's the point.
That's actually such a great idea, and that's such an awesome experience that those people get to have. I get to sit down with you, someone who I look up to, someone who I've watched countless hours of video on, and know their whole entire backstory that's put out to the public, of course. Not saying I'm a stalker or anything,
Yeah.
but this is such an awesome opportunity. So those kids and teenagers getting that's even cooler. So, all right, let's jump to Watford. So you joined Watford. You have a trial. You play the 90 minutes against a top division La Liga side. You play the game of your life, in your words. After that moment, what was going through your mind when they tell you that you're going to sign for 1 year and it's basically a 1 year trial?
Oh man, there's a lot of relief in that first breath, like whoa, because I was sleeping on an attic floor, crawling through a hole in a ceiling to a mattress on the ground like for a year. Like it wasn't easy to do that stuff, and you take a chance on yourself at the end of the day, and so I had a degree in my pocket, but I was like, no, I think I can do this, and so to get that verification finally after over a year. Again, was just first thing relief. Just be like, yes, because I don't do things to prove other people wrong. I do them to prove myself right. So like I put pressure on myself, and I don't want to let myself down. You know what I mean? And if I want to set a goal, I try to do it for me. I don't do it for other people. Like when we start putting ourselves out there, then we doing things for others like that. Like why am I valid? Like I want people to respect me, and I want people to be my teammate. But it's my journey, and at the end of the day, if we don't have that power, then we're living to the life of others. And I've never really been like that. I've always wanted to challenge myself first. No one needs to criticize me. I can do that myself. You know what I mean. And so once criticism came, I was able to be coachable because I was the one that put pressure on myself first. And that allows you to be coachable. That allows you to take a humble approach to development, and you were saying earlier, a holistic approach to development, and that's what I was like. I looked at life through a different lens, through a creative lens, and through going to school for art for 5 years and understanding the design process and like this whole creative process, I used it as an athlete so much about how I developed myself, what I did to train, how I was creative in my approach to people and what I should ask them, how I was a good defender because I was creative in my approach to how I would defend them. I'd do a bunch of research. I'd know the players I was playing against, and I'd get creative as how I think I was going to stop them. And so Watford was allowing me to get to that moment where I got to play against good players. I got to play against pros and really test my theories about what I could be as a defender, and it started from there.
So this is a little bit personal on my side. So in that 2004 through 2005-06 seasons, when you were at Watford before you guys got promoted, did you guys ever get to go play at Derby County at Pride Park?
Yeah, oh yeah. I've played at Pride Park a few times.
Oh, so look, that's the team I support in England. Okay. So that's so awesome. That is so awesome.
Yeah, we played there. Didn't it used to be called the baseball arena or something?
It was before before 1998. It was like the baseball ground, and then they named it the iPro, and now it's the Pride Park. It keeps changing.
Yeah, because that was my first my experience going to the baseball ground. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then I got to hear the history of what it was. But yeah, no, again, going back to the whole idea of like, there's so many clubs and so many great fans out there, and Watford was just for me it was really fitting. I grew up in Green Bay. It's a community-owned club. Watford's a community-based club too. It's the original family club, and we always talk about Graham Taylor and Elton John and how they were the first to put community initiatives into the players' contracts and things like that. And so I when I signed for them, I got this opportunity to kind of show that I was from there, and I like those types of environments and know how to treat the community properly and all this kind of thing. And so for me, I kind of hit the ground running there. I played 30 games my first season, and the second season we got promoted to the Premier League, and I got man of the match in front of 75,000 people at the Millennium Stadium, and I scored the game-winning or the first goal, and we kept a clean sheet. And 2 years before that moment, I was in an attic, $20 in my pocket, trying to buy beans on toast to survive another week, like. And again, I had to go through all of that to deserve those moments and to earn those moments. But, I appreciate the whole story of it. You know what I mean? That's why I tell it so much. It's why it is my purpose to tell it. It's what I have been built for is these types of things for, going through adversities and understanding that, life is really big and if you don't challenge yourself, if you can't be, someone that does that, and tries to be that, then again, I feel like I'm not living to who I am.
It really is one of the best stories I've ever heard. I can honestly tell you that, and that really just struck so deep into me that I've had such a fascination to wanting to dig deeper into it, and ultimately it led me to this. So life is bigger than what you think it is. So 2006, you're in Wales. You scored the first goal. You guys scored 2 more goals. Keep the clean sheet. What was the night out after, like, being promoted in the world's richest game?
Oh, man. Cardiff, I don't know if you've ever been to Cardiff, Wales, but they party pretty hard there in Cardiff. So we had, but again, we were in Wales, and there was a lot more Leeds supporters than there were of Watford. And so you got to be careful. You got to be careful what you do, in that culture. And so I think we had a lot of friends and family in town. So for me, it was just being able to bring my brother out and meet all the guys and party there. That's always the thing about players, like we are very protected in a lot of ways, and even more so now than we were back then. But just being able to enjoy those moments with your family, getting your brother to come out and hang out with all these guys he gets to see on TV, and that for me was always the best part. Like, we get to do this stuff. Like, we get to so why wouldn't you enjoy it? Why wouldn't you have that drink with the fan? Why wouldn't you chant the chant, man? And that's what I'm like. And because again, I come from those environments. I was at the other end of that bar 2 years earlier, so I know what that's like as well. And so I always had a really affinity for the fans and an appreciation for them. And so I think those nights too are about that. So there were always a few Watford fans in that bar that night, and they had the best night ever because they were the minnows in the big pond. Leeds was supposed to smash us, and then there's all of a sudden we go and smash them, and I think there was a lot of Watford fans that were pleasantly surprised that day, and had such the day of their lives. And Millennium was strange because normally those games are at Wembley, and so because Wembley was under construction at the time, and so you had to travel to Cardiff, and the Millennium's still a big old stadium, and it's the Super Bowl of championship games, and it's worth more than any game on the planet.
So I have one last question regarding Watford and the championship and in the Premier League as well. So in your time in England, what was the best atmosphere that you were able to play in, bar the playoff final? Home or away?
Watford, you said?
Yes, at Watford.
Ooh. I mean, Anfield. Anfield was awesome. I ended up playing there my first season because we got the Carling Cup, the League Cup semifinal, and it was a 2-leg, and I got to play at Anfield like my 25th game of my life, and got to see what world class was. Like playing against Steven Gerrard, I watched like a world class player for the first time. I was playing because we were in the championship my first season, so just be on the field with someone like Steven Gerrard and see the way he moved and the way he hit a ball, and it's just like. It was such a wake-up call for me to know that, like, yeah, you made it to this championship level, but there's like a whole nother level, a whole nother step up that you got to kind of keep working towards. And so I think those moments, my first season, was definitely, playing an Anfield on a cup night too, was pretty special.
That is so awesome, and I can't even imagine being out with stars like that who you hear about and you know about, and it's just like, wow, you made it here. That is so awesome. All right, I won't keep you for too much longer. I have 2 more questions about the United States. All right, so let's talk about the Confederation Cup 2009, playing against Euro champions, playing against the soon-to-be world champions, the Spanish. So, Carlos Bocanegra goes down with a knee injury. Am I correct?
I think it was his knee, but maybe his groin. I don't care.
Who cares? Carlos goes down with an injury. Bob Bradley turns to Jay Demerit, says, "Jay, need you to step up. You're in the starting 11." So, if you can recall, I know this was a long time ago. Do you remember what the tactics were that Bob Bradley instilled for you personally and for the team to play against arguably the greatest stretch of a national team in the history of its sport?
Yeah, and like, thankfully, for me, I got put in right as in the first couple games. So, we had Brazil, Italy, and Egypt as my first 3 real starts for the national team, and so I was a baptism of fire for me, but it certainly was something I was waiting for. Again, it's kind of a common theme in my story. Like, you first spend time on the sidelines watching, and then you wait for that opportunity, then you take it, and then you just go to the next level and you do that process again, right? And so I was kind of at the highest part of my process there, but still working and playing. I made the national team, but I wasn't playing. I was traveling around, and I was captain at Watford, so I was getting a lot of games. But at the end of the day, playing for your national team is different too, and so I had to wait my turn, as you do, respectfully to the guys in front of you. There's only 23 guys that get to go, and only 11 of them get to start. So, that's a big deal. And so, I knew that you got to wait for those opportunities. And I think that was kind of a real trustworthy experience for me and Bob Bradley, for him to trust me and give me the reins to go out there and play against Brazil and Egypt and then make the second round and then have an opportunity, because again, Boca came back for that Spain game actually, but he was like, you know what, Jay, I think you're playing well with Gooch. I'm going to put Boca on the left now. And so again, I earned that spot. And then that kind of formed that back four with Steve Cherundolo on the other side. And I think, we were locked down D, at the end of the day, to the question, I think we locked down from both sides. And so Michael and like Ricardo Clark, those guys were both locked down D. They were good too. But the only way you can beat Spain is to cut down their space in the lanes, right? And so they would cut down like the Xavi and Iniesta, who were playing. It's just crazy to think that those guys were in the center of the park. But then Gooch and I, we'd have David Villa and Fernando Torres. And so we just knew that they'd be moving around like this all the time. And so if we stay compact as a 4, we can be fine because we can close them down in both directions whenever they get the ball. And that's what we did, really in that core cube. And then we just looked to counter. And Josie was a great counter player at the time. He's a big guy, so he can wrestle with the best of them. And so he got his opportunity to go 1-0 up. And then we just stayed within our shape. And at the end of the day, you can see Morocco doing it right now. It's the same type of theory where 11 guys are defending, all with, like, again, purpose. Like, we wanted to defend against them. That's the only way you can beat them. And so that was kind of our jam. And I was a defensive, that's all I cared about. I could give 2 shits about passing the ball out of the back or doing some 40-year-old switch to the other side or trying to hit some winger in stride. Like, I was out there to defend and defend only and win the ball, give it to somebody better than me. That's straight up. Like, I'm out there to defend. I'm out there to be a menace. I'm out there to be relentless. Like, that was my job. And to make sure that I was disrupting the rhythms of the people in front of me. And those guys, again, I was so interested in their rhythms. Like, trying to disrupt David Villa and Fernando Torres is very different than disrupting a Didier Drogba or a Robin Van Persie or somebody like that who's slashy and tall and big and, like, wants to fight. Like, like that for me was the best part and the most fun, but it was the hardest part because these guys are insane. Like, they're so good. And when you defend, you have to be reactive. And so that's hard when the proactivity in front of you is really, really, really high.
That's the first United States memory I have is watching us beat Spain and then go 2-0 up on Brazil. And unfortunately, they just had so much quality that we couldn't bring it home. But what a tournament. And I can imagine has so many memories with such a great group of men.
And for me, it was I look at that as my opportunity, on the national team was in those environments, again, to play against those teams. It really set up, again, a good, confident run into the World Cup. Like, we came into that confident off a good run in everything from our qualifying all the way through the Confed Cup. And so we came in at that World Cup looking to do some damage.
Look, I honestly could probably sit here and ask you questions for 2 hours, but I have one last question and then I'll let you run and then enjoy the rest of your Friday. All right, so best jersey swap you ever had? So it's a 2-part question. And then what was the biggest disappointment if someone ever turned you down? Or you wished, if no one turned you down, then you wished you would have been like, oh, I wish I would have asked if I could have got his kit.
The best one is Pirlo.
Oh, that is so awesome.
From that Confed Cup. I mean, I've just always had so much respect for the guy. Like, he's just an incredible, gifted player. You know what I mean? Like, what he did with the ball was insane. And so that was my coming out party. That was the 2009 Confeds Cup. And so to be able to share jerseys with guys like that, he roasted me down the line one time too. So, like, I kind of lived in that moment where he totally tricked me and, like, just sold me down the line and got me to go the other way. But again, like, I look at those moments with like happiness, not with like, oh, I should have done this. It's like, that was awesome.
That is awesome.
You know what I mean? And so then you get those jerseys. And I think if I could have, probably one of the Brazilians. I didn't play against the Brazil when we played them in Chicago in a friendly. And I always felt like if I didn't play, then I don't get a jersey.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Like, if I'm a sub and I'm running up to, like, Ronaldo trying to get his jersey, like, that's disrespectful to the players that got to play against him. And so if I didn't play, I was on the bench for that game, and I was like, okay. But I kind of wish I would have just gone and asked somebody for their jerseys just so it happened. Yeah. I mean, those are good memories. But yeah, I would say those.
Well, Jay, thank you for taking the time out to talk to me. I'm very humbled, and I can't thank you enough. I have so much gratitude, and you really are one of the real American pioneers. You've set the way for what's going on now with all of our players going abroad. So again, thank you. I valued this time I got to talk to you, and hopefully we get to talk again soon. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.